I'm always looking for excuses to challenge myself, and one of my best buddies is getting married. They specifically said they would prefer cash gifts, so I'm gonna make them an instrument. I've never made any kind of instrument before, so we'll see how this goes. This is going to be a variation of a kalimba, which is sometimes referred to as a thumb piano. I'm gonna start by making this part, the Resonator Cone. My plan is to 3D print some forms, cast stamping dies, and shape the sheet metal cone in my hydraulic press. I'm Dylan, this is PunkerBuilds, and let's get this kalimba started. These 3D prints are the negatives of the forming dies I actually need. So after a quick cleanup of the prints, I'll make mold frames and pour concrete directly over top to get the actual stamping die surfaces. I thought really hard about what to use for these dies, including fiberglass or metal powder filled resin, but I figured I'd give concrete a go. It's cheap, it has a high compressive strength, why not? I built this concrete vibrating table a long time ago, but it vibrates the concrete so that the concrete can flow into the mold better. The pre-mixed bag of concrete I'm using is rated for 6,000 psi, so as long as it doesn't explode, it should at least take some of the work out of this process. After 24 hours, I pop them out, clean them up a little bit, and then put them in a bag to trap the moisture while they cure for the next few days. It'll take 28 days to reach full cure, but I'm not gonna wait for that. They look pretty good. They've got some bug holes, but I only need this to survive for one cone. So here we go. Lubed up with some Vaseline, let's stamp some aluminum. Well, shit. In the end, what did work was forming the cone in 2 steps. I did have to switch over from aluminum to stainless, it just held together better. Let's deal with these ripples. I, probably a lot like you, watch a lot of YouTube videos, and I'm always looking for tricks to add to my skill set. Well, this one I got from blacksmith videos. I tried my hand at making a spring swage, and it worked great for smoothing out this flange. Then I made this little stake to finish these other surfaces. The next part of the Resonator Cone assembly is the bridge. A kalimba, which has a bunch of other names I am not going to attempt to pronounce, is a metal tined instrument originating in Africa. They're really delightful little things and easy to learn to play. You just use your fingers to pluck at the tines as keys, not unlike a little piano. really didn't want to build a boring Kalimba, so I thought I'd overcomplicate this immediately, which probably isn't the best idea seeing as I've never made one. But I had this idea from a steel guitar to incorporate a resonator cone. To transfer sound to the cone, I need to make a bridge for the keys to rest on. The bridge itself is 1/4 inch brass, and the bar that the keys rest on is some 304 stainless that gets silver soldered on. Soldering is one of those things where it's usually better to have too much rather than not enough. So I'll flood this joint and file off any extra solder after. Then it's on to finishing, and more finishing, and even more finishing. Sanding and finishing is one of those means to an end kind of things. It's not my favorite part of the process, but it's become such a large part of my life that I can kind of just daydream through it, and at the end it's just done. The body of the Kalimba is 16 gauge 304 stainless steel, which is just awesome to die stamp. I made some dies out of 3/8 inch steel plate. The stainless steel gets sandwiched in between and sent to the press, just like the concrete dies. This die is symmetrical, so I'm going to use this to make the top and the bottom of the body. And that's how we're going to get nice rounded corners. So a quick trim off of the excess material, some sanding to make the edges flat, and we can move on to sawing the F-holes. You can use old belt sander material for this, but I like to make these little sanding strips. They're reinforced with duct tape, and after trimming them down can fit in my jewelry saw. That way I can sand the insides of things. I need a strip to make the sidewall of this body. I'll just bend it by hand, and we can start putting it all together. That edge is alright, but this one is exactly what I'm looking for. The best way to get scratches out of metal is to not put them in. So I've left this protective tape on as long as possible, and now I can finally take it off. To clean off any of the residue left by the tape or finger oils or anything else, everything gets sanded and wiped down with alcohol before welding. Speaking of welding, I have to protect the backside of these welds from the atmosphere. The best way would be to back purge with argon, but I'm not set up for that. Instead, I'm going to try out this Solar Flux Type B for stainless steel. It comes as a powder, you mix it with alcohol, and after a couple minutes it can be brushed on. You just need to let the excess alcohol evaporate before welding. Now it's just that old-fashioned game of battling shrinkage. I try to lock in the corners before jumping around and tacking up the rest. At the same time, I'm planning out my weld spacing to start and end on these tacks. I'm going to try my best to balance the heat, cooling in between welds and making sure the direction of travel goes towards a previously completed weld. This is because the weld will shrink in the direction of travel. So if I end on an already cooled weld, it has more mass and resistance to distortion than a joint that hasn't been welded yet. I've also got the whole body of the Kalimba sandwiched between aluminum plates. This is to wick away the heat evenly. Alright, let's see how that worked. Yup, definitely still distorted. It should be fine though, so I'll move on and start cleaning up the welds. The last major part we need to make is the tensioning assembly. This will both hold the tines and keep the Resonator Cone assembly in place. These two pieces need to be bent symmetrically, so I'll bend first and then cut them out of the same bar. To keep them symmetrical, I can bolt them together and grind them at the same time. If there's anything in this video that I didn't explain and you want to know more about it, leave a comment down below. Metalworking is super satisfying and I've made it my career. Really, I'm an open book, and if you like these types of build videos as much as I like making them, consider liking and subscribing. I have a long list of projects on the back burner, and the more this channel grows, the easier it'll be for me to take you along for the ride. If a welding ground doesn't have a really strong connection, it can create burn spots where it touches. It's called stray arcing. After putting all that effort in to keep this nice and clean, I really don't want the welding current to arc on the outside of the body, so I'm going to make sure that it arcs on the inside of the body and put an insulator between it and the table. The heat from welding oxidizes the stainless and changes its color. I have to manually scuff up the surface to remove it. Thought I'd give this a try, and it only kind of worked. I'm trying to remove some of the slag and extra flux from the backside of the welds. It removed the flux that didn't melt, but it wasn't aggressive enough to chip the actual welds clean. Though I will say, I don't have any porosity, so I'm really happy with the flux. It's just kind of stubborn to get off. In the event this doesn't sound great, I figured, why not? And decided to install a pickup. Maybe we can hook it to a distortion pedal because, you know, why not? I just held these down with double-sided tape. I opted to buy the tines. They're available and affordable online for anyone who wants to make a Kalimba of their own. The Resonator Cone slips in loose, and the tines, under pressure, hold it solidly in place. So this bizarrely complicated and unique little music box is for a friend that I've known since kindergarten. This project turned out to be a huge undertaking, but was overall really fun. The biggest perk was building it for a close friend. Despite living about 3,800 kilometers away from each other for the last 15 years, we've stayed in contact and gamed together pretty regularly. Miles and Danielle, I know you have a bright and beautiful future together. I wish you the best, and hey, it's only a year late, so happy anniversary. The center tines sound really good because they're well positioned over the resonator cone. But the ones that are on the edge, they run along the rim of the resonator cone and they really just don't transfer very well. They have hardly any sustain, they sound pretty harsh, and they're really difficult to tune. If you know something or anything about music, because I absolutely do not, feel free to leave a comment below. I would love to know more about where I could have made my life a little easier on this build. I really don't know what I'm doing on this, and it's just been fun to play with, but there are some serious issues with the sound. I mean, it kind of works, but I don't know if it was necessarily worth making 2 of them. Anyways, thanks for watching. Cheers. I've definitely learned a bunch of things that I would do differently on the next one, but I can promise you that there will never, ever be another one.